James Whitey Bulger, Boston's most infamous gangster, met a brutal end in a place he could never escape: his prison cell. He was found beaten to death, his body so battered he was nearly unrecognizable, his eyes almost pushed from their sockets. The violence of his final moments was a grim echo of the life he had led, a life defined by fear, betrayal, and bloodshed. The attack lasted just 7 minutes, an eternity in the world of prison violence, but it brought to a close a lifetime spent running from justice, manipulating the system, and leaving a trail of victims in his wake. In those few minutes, decades of crime and corruption came to a sudden, violent halt. Bulger, at 89 years old, was frail and confined to a wheelchair. He had just arrived at USP Hazleton, a prison so notorious among inmates and guards alike that it earned the nickname Misery Mountain. For Bulger, it was supposed to be just another stop in a long journey through the American penal system, but his reputation as a notorious informant, a rat in the eyes of the underworld, followed him everywhere. In prison, that label is a death sentence, and everyone knew it. Whispers and sideways glances trailed him from the moment he arrived. Despite the obvious danger, the Bureau of Prisons placed him in general population, surrounded by men who had every reason to hate him. It was a fatal mistake, one that would have consequences far beyond the prison walls. His killers used a padlock wrapped in a sock, a weapon as crude as it was deadly. They swung with a hatred that had simmered for decades, fueled by old grudges and the code of silence that rules prison life. When guards finally discovered Bulger, it was already too late. The man who once ruled Boston's underworld with an iron fist was gone. His reign ended not by the law, but by the very violence he had once unleashed on others. His story ended not quietly, but with a savage bang inside a cold, unforgiving prison cell. The echoes of that violence would reverberate far beyond those steel bars. News of Bulger's death sent shockwaves across the country. Reporters scrambled for details, and the public was left stunned by the sudden violent end of a man who had eluded justice for so long. For the families of his victims, it was a kind of closure, an end to the story that had haunted them for decades. Some wept, others simply stared in silence, processing the news that the man who had caused them so much pain was finally gone. For law enforcement, Bulger's death was a stark reminder of the failures that had allowed him to thrive for so long. It was a moment to reflect on the corruption, the missed opportunities, and the broken promises that had let a monster walk free for years. The public saw it as yet another dark chapter in a story that refuses to end, a tale of crime, betrayal, and the limits of justice in America. How could the system fail so spectacularly, letting one of America's most notorious criminals be murdered under its watch? The question echoed in congressional hearings, in newsrooms, and in the minds of a stunned nation. The question lingers, heavy as a Boston fog, settling over the city and the country, a reminder that some stories never truly end, and some ghosts never really fade away. Before prison, James Whitey Bulger was the undisputed king of South Boston, a legend whose name echoed through every alley and corner bar. His reputation was built on both fear and fascination, and for decades he was the city's most notorious figure. Raised in the tough old harbor projects, Bulger learned early that power came from fear, and that respect was earned, not given. The streets were unforgiving, and survival meant being tougher, smarter, and more ruthless than the next guy. He started with petty crime, small-time thefts, hustles, and street fights, but his ambition was boundless. Bulger quickly built the Winter Hill Gang into Boston's dominant criminal force, outmaneuvering rivals and forging alliances that would shape the city's underworld for years. Bulger controlled rackets from loan sharking to drug trafficking, ruling with an iron fist. He orchestrated extortion schemes, illegal gambling, and protection rackets, pulling the strings from the shadows. To some, he was a protector who kept the Italian mafia out of Southie, a local hero who looked after his own. To others, he was a ruthless predator, preying on anyone who crossed him or threatened his empire. Bulger carefully crafted the myth of a Robin Hood, claiming he avoided hard drugs and only targeted outsiders, but this was a lie, a smokescreen that masked his true role in poisoning his own streets and profiting from the misery of his neighbors. Bulger's power was absolute. Silence and fear kept the neighborhood in check. People whispered his name, but never too loudly, and always with a glance over their shoulder. Snitching meant death, a lesson he enforced relentlessly. Informants vanished, and bodies turned up in alleys, sending a clear message to anyone who might consider betraying him. He moved like a ghost, his presence felt even when unseen. The mere rumor of his involvement was enough to make people disappear or fall silent. For decades, Bulger was more than a crime boss. He was a force of nature, untouchable and feared by all. His legend grew with every headline, every whispered story, every unsolved crime. Parents warned their kids about him. Criminals dreaded his wrath. Even the police treaded carefully, knowing that crossing Bulger could mean the end of a career or a life. Bulger's shadow loomed over Boston, dark and unyielding, a constant reminder that in Southie, there was only one prince, and his reign was absolute. Bulger's secret weapon wasn't just violence, it was the FBI. In 1975, Agent John Connolly, a fellow Southie, offered Bulger a deal: become an informant. Bulger agreed, but only to betray his rivals, not his own crew. The FBI got mafia convictions. Bulger got protection to expand his empire. Connolly became more than a handler, he was Bulger's shield, feeding him tips and burying evidence. The FBI, blinded by its war on the mafia, helped create Boston's most powerful criminal. Connolly and Bulger's relationship blurred the line between lawman and outlaw. They shared dinners, gifts, and secrets. Partners in crime, not justice. Connolly's ambition and loyalty let Bulger operate with impunity. The FBI's devil's bargain let a monster thrive in plain sight. Justice was perverted, and the city paid the price. John Connolly was the FBI's golden boy, celebrated for his success against the mafia. Ambitious and charismatic, Connolly quickly became a rising star within the bureau, earning the trust of his superiors and the admiration of his peers. His reputation was built on a string of high-profile arrests and a seemingly uncanny ability to infiltrate Boston's criminal underworld. No one questioned how he got results, or what it cost. Behind closed doors, Connolly operated with little oversight, and his methods were rarely scrutinized. The FBI was eager for wins, and Connolly delivered no matter the means. Connolly shielded Bulger, intervening whenever police got close, claiming Bulger was vital to federal investigations. He convinced colleagues that Bulger's information was indispensable, and that protecting him was in the Bureau's best interest. He leaked law enforcement secrets, letting Bulger eliminate informants and rivals. These betrayals allowed Bulger to tighten his grip on Boston, eliminating threats before they could act. Connolly profited, blurring the line between cop and criminal. He accepted gifts, cash, and favors, all while maintaining the facade of a dedicated agent. For 15 years, Bulger's empire grew unchecked, while Connolly rose through the ranks. The two men's fates became intertwined, each benefiting from the other's power and influence. But the truth surfaced, thanks to investigators who refused to look away. A handful of determined agents and journalists began to piece together the web of corruption, risking their careers to expose the truth. When indictments loomed in 1994, Connolly tipped Bulger off one last time. That single phone call would change the course of both their lives forever. Bulger vanished, becoming one of America's most wanted fugitives. For years he evaded capture, his legend growing with every sighting and rumor. Connolly's final act of loyalty set the stage for both their downfalls. The partnership that once seemed unbreakable was now the subject of national scandal. The partnership that built an empire ended in betrayal and disgrace. Connolly was arrested, tried and convicted, his career and reputation destroyed. The FBI's greatest asset had become its greatest shame, a cautionary tale of ambition, corruption, and the devastating cost of loyalty to the wrong man. In 1994, Bulger disappeared, slipping through the government's fingers. For 16 years, he was a ghost, second only to Osama bin Laden, on the FBI's most wanted list. The manhunt spanned the globe, but Bulger hid in plain sight. He and Catherine Grigg lived quietly in Santa Monica, California, as Charles and Carol Gasco. They paid rent in cash, kept to themselves, and blended in. Bulger, once a feared kingpin, became a quiet retiree. The break came when the FBI targeted Greg, airing ads about her love of animals in beauty salons. A neighbor recognized them and the FBI closed in. Bulger was arrested without a fight, his apartment filled with guns and cash. The master of evasion was finally caught. His long run was over, the legend unmasked. Justice had finally caught up. Bulger's 2013 trial was a spectacle, Boston's darkest secrets on display. The prosecution detailed decades of extortion, drug trafficking, and murder. Former associates testified, recounting chilling stories of betrayal and violence. Bulger was accused of 19 murders, The testimony was gruesome. He refused to testify, insisting he wasn't a rat, only a gangster, never an informant. His legacy mattered more to him than his freedom. After 2 months, the jury found him guilty on 31 counts, including 11 murders. He was sentenced to 2 life terms plus 5 years. For victims' families, it was long-awaited justice. The myth was gone, only the facts remained. The devil had finally received his due. In October 2018, Bulger was transferred to USP Hazleton, a notorious prison for violence. At 89, wheelchair-bound and infamous as a snitch, he was a marked man. Within hours, he was dead, beaten with a padlock in a sock. Surveillance showed 2 inmates entering his cell. No one intervened. For hours his body lay undiscovered. The aftermath was chaos, lockdown, and questions. Why was he sent there? Why was he in general population? His family sued, alleging officials set him up. The government denied it. A Justice Department report blamed management failures and flawed policies. The message was clear. In organized crime, being an informant is the ultimate sin. Bulger lived by violence and died by it, a grim irony. His end was as brutal as his life. For years, Bulger's murder investigation stalled in the prison system's shadows. In 2022, indictments finally came. Fotios Freddy Gaius, a mafia hitman, was the main assailant. Gaius, already serving life, saw killing Bulger as underworld justice. Paul DeCollegiero acted as lookout. Sean McKinnon, the second attacker, later cooperated with authorities. By 2024, McKinnon was released, DeCollegiero got 4 more years, and Gaius received 25 extra years, symbolic as he'd never be free. The legal case closed, but questions lingered. The sentences felt anticlimactic, career criminals punished on paper. The real story: why was Bulger left vulnerable? For many, the reckoning felt incomplete. The final chapter left too many questions unanswered. Bulger's murder exposed deep failures in the Federal Bureau of Prisons. How could such a notorious figure be left so vulnerable? His death became a symbol of violence, corruption, and incompetence in the system. Public outrage and media scrutiny forced lawmakers to act. In 2024, the Senate passed a bill to overhaul federal prison oversight, aiming for transparency and accountability. The system itself was finally on trial, forced to confront its flaws. Bulger's story seemed to end, his crimes judged, his protectors exposed, his killers sentenced. But the legend was always built on secrets and unanswered questions. His death, like his life, leaves a trail of mystery. In a story this dark, can we ever truly turn the final page? For more deep dives into the stories that shape our world, subscribe.